are currently undertaking an inquiry into the unequal impact of coronavirus on, you know, certain disadvantaged groups. I wonder whether that will encompass, for instance, the young people who have been disadvantaged by what happened when Gavin Williamson cancelled the exams, and how disadvantaged and vulnerable groups have been particularly affected by the lack of schooling.
Well, I think you make a really good point, Susanna, and we heard yesterday from teachers that those who have fallen furthest behind are the disadvantaged groups particularly, and boys. I think that's really interesting, but age is a protected characteristic. Of course, we're concerned at the impact this is having on young people, not just on their academic attainment, but on their mental health and well-being. And that's why I'm such a huge supporter of schools going back this week. And it's so important that we make that work and that children get the education they deserve and need. And I think the work that's been done with the Education Endowment Foundation is really important, about tutoring, to make sure that you can put targeted support in to help those who have fallen the furthest behind and enable them to catch up. But I was in the House yesterday questioning Gavin Williamson on how that's going to work. And I think what's crucially important is we see that rolled out as quickly as possible.
Do you think, I mean, how much responsibility should be laid at Gavin Williamson's door? You know, we've seen a senior member of his department go over this debacle over A-levels and GCSEs. We've seen the head of Ofqual go. Gavin Williamson is still in place. Lots of people affected can't understand why. He's claimed he didn't know enough about the algorithm. He wasn't told until the last minute, didn't realise until, all these children were affected, that it was a disaster. The Guardian takes issue with that, saying he would have known about it weeks in advance. I mean, what is Gavin Williamson still doing in such an influential post when he's made so many mistakes?
Well, I like to think that Gavin is sorting it out, and I think that's crucially important at this point, rather than...
He's sorting it out, Caroline notes, after thousands of A-level students and GCSE students had to go through what they went through. I mean, the mess has been made. He should have gone before. Why did the Ofqual head go, and why did the civil servant go?
Well, you're not wrong that it was a mess. And I certainly spoke up on behalf of the hundreds of parents and teenagers that contacted me, the college principals from my area who were deeply concerned, I would say months in advance. And I can remember having a Zoom meeting with the principal of Bath and Peveril College probably back in April or May, discussing what impact this would have on a generation of teenagers. Now, I think it's crucially important that we give the DfE the chance to sort this out, that we get a focus on A, catch up for these children who've missed so much schooling, but B, what are we going to do about next year's exams? These are year 11 and 13 who have missed effectively 20% of either their GCSE teaching time or their A-level teaching time. And we have to have a clear plan in place so that next year's 18-year-olds and 16-year-olds can have certainty about what they're facing in the summer exams, and certainly what they'll be looking at for their futures, because that's what they want. Certainty is to know whether they can progress.
This all comes down to trust in the government, and in particular in the man charged with overseeing education, which is Gavin Williamson. Do you know him personally?
I would say that I know Gavin reasonably well. We came in 2010 in the same cohort of MPs.
What am I missing? I'm serious. Serious question. To me, he's like a low-level, mediocre undertaker who appears out of the shadows to give us only bad news, normally about his own ineptitude and failures, and then he blames everybody else and buries them instead.
So I thought Gavin did a good job in the House yesterday. It showed that he was across the issue and he gave reassurance to colleagues, and I think that was important. More important is that going forward, he reassures pupils.
Gavin Williamson wouldn't reassure me to open a crisp packet. What am I missing? This guy has presided over one of the most spectacular series of failures in modern education history.
And got sacked
Everybody
from his
else involved has been thrown under the bus, and yet there he stays, like some weird limpet clutching onto the stone. I mean, again, I ask you simply, as somebody who knows him better than me, what am I missing? What are we all missing? He's got a whip on his desk.
Because he used to be the former chief whip.
He looks weird and creepy. Who has a whip on their desk? He's in charge of our nation's kids. What is he doing with a whip on his desk?
Well, as you know, Piers, he's a former chief whip. I assume that Gavin was referring to his long track record in government by posing for that photograph, reminding us all that he was the chief whip. But Gavin clearly has the trust of the Prime Minister. He's demonstrated himself.
No, he clearly
over
does,
the
but
past
why?
few
But
years.
why, Caroline? The question is not that he does. We know that he's doing his job. What is it that Boris Johnson sees in Gavin Williamson that none of us see?
Well, I think Gavin is very good at rallying colleagues behind him. I think he has demonstrated that he's an effective campaigner.
Is it because he was chief whip, so he knows where all the bodies are buried?
Does he use that whip behind closed doors? Is he whipping everybody? But what's going on?
Well, no, he certainly isn't whipping anybody. And when he was chief whip, he did not resort to that sort of physical violence, Piers, which would have been wholly inappropriate.
Is he bringing back private corporal punishment?
I know he looks like a mean head teacher.
I just find it utterly baffling. But Boris Johnson can't fire people, can he? He doesn't know how to do it. Unless they voted Remain. He doesn't know how to do it.
Well, you know, we all remember Boris fired me brutally by Twitter, and he didn't seem to have a problem doing that. And I'm sure that in due course, the Prime Minister will have a reshuffle and will bring in fresh people, some of the new talent that we've got in the parliamentary
Would you reshuffle Gavin Williamson if you were in charge?
Well, I don't think there's any danger of me ever being in charge, Piers, so I don't conduct fantasy
I think you're one
reshuffles.
of the people that should be back in the Cabinet, personally. Apart from anything else, you've got the balls to come on here, which none of the Cabinet currently do. So I would actually promote you back to the Cabinet, and I would create the vacancy, perhaps by removing somebody like Gavin Williamson.
Well, thank you, Piers. That's very kind of you to say that.
Thank you. Let's bring in Kevin Maguire. Kevin, look, apart from his ability to rally, we'll keep Caroline. We're going to come back to Caroline. Apart from Gavin Williamson's ability to rally his colleagues behind the scenes, which sounds quite sinister in terms of the tactics a former chief whip might use, given he has all their secrets at his disposal, it does come down to trust, doesn't it? In the end, trust in Williamson, trust in Boris Johnson, trust in the government. As the schools go back this week, this country has to trust them. And I think that's where the problem is.
No, that's right. Last December, I remember the country gave him an 80-seat parliamentary majority. But now Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, has better poll ratings than Boris Johnson. People would prefer Starmer as the Prime Minister. And Labour's drawn level in certainly one poll that was out recently. That big Tory lead is gone. And I think it does come down to trust. And the trust has been eroded because of the level of incompetence of Boris Johnson. He got a lot of goodwill at the beginning of the coronavirus crisis, a lot of sympathy for him personally when he was infected. But he's just unsuitable to rule. He is a cynical liar. He is lazy, but it's that incompetence you've got to keep coming back to. And his loyalty now seems to be to cabinet ministers who owe their loyalty to him. It's not to the country as a whole. And Gavin Williamson should have been out of that door. But then remember the case just at the beginning of the summer, the community secretary, Robert Jenrick, he did a favour for a Tory donor who's going to make tens of millions of pounds from a property deal, save the money that would have gone to one of the poorest communities in London. And yet he clung on to his job. I think this is really damaging to Boris Johnson himself. But he's going to put off that reshuffle, we're told, until next year.
OK,